I'm Tanya Fox, and you're listening to Fox Talks Business Podcast. I started my career in the corporate world, but always played to my own tune and loved to think outside of the box. This didn't always serve me well with the bosses, so I made the decision to become an entrepreneur. And that little seed of entrepreneurial curiosity continued to grow as I branched out into retail, service, and franchise businesses. Now, I have been fortunate to have amazing successes in the last 2 decades, but they did not come without some really big failures and even bigger lessons learned. And that's why I started this podcast, not just to share the failures, but to show you how you can turn every failure into a success. We're going to hear from some amazing humans from around the world that are going to share their stories of the good, the bad, and the motivational entrepreneurial life has to offer. After all, life is too short to make all of the mistakes yourself, so why not learn from each other? And of course, we're going to have some fun, because as I always say, well, you know what? I'll tell you that at the end of the episode. So thank you so much for coming on the show today, Miranda. I'm so excited to have you.
Thank you so much. I'm excited too.
So tell us a little bit of the background, because of course you didn't start by being a human design specialist. So tell us a little bit about the story of, kind of where you started and then how the transition happened.
Yeah, that's a long story. So I'll try not to make it too long. First and foremost, I'd like to just say that everything is energy. So just knowing that, looking back at your life, you can really start to reflect and notice when things were off alignment and when things were on alignment regarding what age you were, what was happening in your life, what choices you were making. So for me, it all started, I lived in Vermont. I'm the oldest of, there's 6 of us there, but I have 2 sisters in New York as well. So there's 8 of us and I'm the oldest. When I say that we had to walk a mile to catch the bus, I am not joking. I brought my husband there and he's like, oh my gosh, you weren't joking. So we lived way out in the boonsticks. At times we struggled financially because there were so many of us. We had no hot water, no electricity. We were able to read very well because of no electricity and no TV. But that's where I started. And my mother was very detached because she had so many of us, and I was the oldest. So I didn't receive a lot of the attention or love, what I felt was love at that time from her. So from that point, I started feeling that I wasn't loved and I wasn't good enough. And then my stepfather, he was basically there for the income. So he worked and came home and slept because he worked nights. So from that place, I started making this belief that I wasn't loved. My parents didn't love me. My mother didn't love me. We didn't have enough of anything. I wanted to just be normal. I wanted to do things like other kids. So I ended up moving out of my house when I was 14, and I started living with friends. And at that point in time, I was just out partying at 14,
Right, of course.
I didn't have any discipline, anything holding back. So I was just doing what I wanted. So that part of my life, the energy was just going with the flow and momentum. I wasn't thinking, I wasn't aware. I was just living day to day. And I wasn't really. Do you have a question?
Yeah, I'm just curious. Like when you were living at home, being the oldest child in that many kids, do you find that obviously usually the older kids have the responsibility put on them to care for the younger ones. So do you find that when you went out, you kind of maybe were a little bit more loose in stuff that you were wanting to do because you were feeling like you had responsibility put on you so young?
My sister was 3 years younger than me, and I may not remember it, but I don't really feel like I had to do a lot of the responsibility of taking care of the kids. My mother loved young kids.
Oh, okay.
It was us older kids that took care of ourselves. So that's why I moved out, because I was taking care of myself anyway. She wasn't helping me to get up to go to school. I mean, it was all on me to do it. So when I moved out, I had a little bit of stability because the people that I was staying with, they would go to school. They did have parents that did that. However, we lived in a small town and there wasn't a lot to do except for party. So, that's what we did, And I did that for a very long time until I was about in my 20s. And then I ended up getting pregnant with my first son. And I will say that was a gift. He was not planned at all, but he definitely gave me the opportunity to slow down and to recognize that I have responsibilities now. And I didn't want to be like my mother. I wanted to be there. I wanted to support him and always be there for him. So in that time is when I started noticing my energy change from just like having fun and going out and doing whatever I wanted to being responsible and wanting to create a life for him. Now, that wasn't the end of all the scary stuff, because from there I ended up falling in love with someone that was very abusive. So I was in an abusive marriage for 6 years. I had another son, and it took me about a year to actually get my thoughts together and my courage together to be able to get out of that relationship, because he was so controlling in everything that he did. I was very restricted. And it was about 28 that I ended up leaving. And it's interesting because when I go into the human design chart, it actually goes into astrology. And 28 to 30 is when your Saturn returns. And that is usually a time when there's a huge shift in your energy and your awareness. And at that point, it happened. Like, I have no idea what gave me the strength to say, this is not happening anymore. My boys are not going to be in this. This is not okay for them to see. I'm planning this and I'm getting out. There was no holding back. And I just knew it at that point. And then from that point, I became very strong. You know, I became cold. I was raising 2 boys on my own. I had to work. I was a personal trainer at the time. So I worked around their schedule so I could be there. I would pick them up and bring them to school and do everything that I was supposed to do as a parent. But yet I was very cold, very hard, which is interesting. That I was a personal trainer and getting hard, you know, hard and making it through. And that really was great for me for a long period of time. But then I overheard someone in the gym tell someone else that I was an ice princess. And I was like, well, that is not what I want to be known as.
That's not what I was meaning to portray.
Like, I get it. I'm raising these 2 boys. They're in middle school and high school now. I had to. But that point made me realize, okay, I need to open up to vulnerability a little bit. I need to soften. I'm not in love with anyone. I'm not letting anyone love me because of this hardness that I've created and this safety that I've created. So that is when I started doing yoga. And I dove deep into yoga practice so I could open up to the vulnerabilities and release all of the traumas and experiences that I was holding in my body. And through that, I realized that I was a mess. I went through all these things. I was carefree and didn't care about really anything, to a hardcore, strong mom. And then I wasn't opening up myself to be loved or to love anyone other than my kids. And I didn't want that to happen. So I let myself do the messy work, as I like to say. And this happened for about 6 years. I really dove in to connecting with who I was, connecting to the beliefs that I created about myself, opening up to let people hurt me again. I protected myself for so long in that. And then when I did that, I then wanted to help others do it. So I started teaching, you know, and I started helping them release their experiences in their body. And then from there, I wanted to go deeper into coaching, because I felt like, okay, I can help them with their physical body, but how can I help them express and talk about what's going on with them? How can I ask the right questions? So then I went to coaching, and then I stumbled on human design, which is just like the icing on the cake for everything that I've gone through, because this really helped me first look back at my life and accept everything that I've gone through and appreciate and forgive myself, and even talk to my boys on like being with a parent that was abusive. And if they ever feel like they have those emotions, to come talk to me, like changing the karma of what I had created and what I've been living from my parents' karma. So as soon as I saw my chart, everything opened up, and it was really a time when I let go and really cried, because it was like, oh, thank you. This was all for a reason. My journey here is to struggle. Yes, I have the struggle channel in my chart. Is to struggle and learn through my experiences so that I can help others do the same. Like, that's what I'm here. And I knew it, but I didn't know I knew it until I saw it in my chart.
Well, and I think sometimes that happens quite so often, right? Like when you're in the moment, of course, you don't sit there, especially in a tough moment, and go, oh, this is all happening for a reason, so I'm just going to go through it. You're like, this is shit. Why is this happening to me? Like, this is not fair. What did I do to deserve this, kind of thing. And I think it's not until we look back that we go, oh, okay, there was a lesson there.
And that's awesome that you said that, because now when there is a time of struggle or challenge, I am able to sit back. What is this showing me? What is this here for me for? What am I not seeing? And from there, I can either choose a different path, let it go, or I can choose to push through the struggle as a learning experience.
And I think that's hard for, a lot of people say that. And I always remember my mom used to always say, like, I'd be like, why does this keep happening to me? And she would just go, what lesson aren't you learning? Like, the universe is going to keep throwing this at you until you learn it. So figure it out. Like, you just need to sit and figure it out. So every time I'm in that, I find now the older I get, the more I'm like, okay, I'm not going to let this go on for 3-4 years like I did when I was younger. Let's sit down and try to, sort of figure this out. So, but some people might be sitting out there going, okay, but like, what exactly is human design? Like, is that, so let's dive into, I know it's a big explanation and there's, so many different things, but tell us a little bit about what that is.
Yeah. And I'll just start off with saying, I always say this because of my yoga practice. I know that yoga and healing it's like an onion. You peel off the layers one at a time. And I feel like human design is the same thing. There can be a lot to it, and you can definitely go down rabbit holes and go deep into that, but without really connecting with what it means and then practicing and letting it integrate, then you really lose the process of the growth. So I always like to give little bits and pieces of human design so that they can learn, integrate, and then say, okay, I'm ready for the next step because I've learned it now,
Right.
Yeah, because you can definitely dive in. But human design is based on the time of your birth, the place of your birth, and your birth date. So what that means, it's where the planets are in the universe at your time of birth, where you're at. And where those planets are when the gates are activated, meaning those will be your themes that you experience in your life. So anywhere in the chart that has definition, which is anything that's colored in, it can be a gate or a center, that is a theme in your life. And anything in the chart that is white or not colored in is called open or undefined. And that is where you have variability. It doesn't mean that you don't have that aspect or you don't have those feelings or themes, but it means you experience them in different variabilities because you're taking in other people's energy and experiencing it from them rather than consistency. Some people say that the definition or the colored part of the chart is your authentic self because this is where your theme is. And this is where you have consistency and definition and where you can recognize yourself. But you can really change yourself through the awareness of the open and defined centers. So I don't like to really say authentic. This is where there's consistency.
Right.
And it's also based on traditional strategies. So the human design chart or the body graph information, it was downloaded by, I can never pronounce, I always mess up his name, Rahu Rue, I believe. Yes, Rahu Rue in 1987 during a supernova he was in Israel when he downloaded all this information. And then it was his life purpose to get all this information out to everybody. So then he downloaded the chart, he created the chart. And it's also based on the chakra system. So it's the Hindu chakras, the Kabbalah. I'm I always forget at least one of them. Okay, chakras, Kabbalah, quantum physics or quantum mechanics, and I know astrology. Yes. So it's based on those traditions plus the modern of quantum physics and quantum mechanics. So that's one of the things I really love about it, because as a yoga practitioner, I love tradition. I truly believe that you learn from others. So being able to learn from others from the traditions, oh, and the I Ching. There you go. Got it. So you can learn from those traditions and bring those forth as you are able to step forward into the modern age, which is what makes it accessible to people nowadays.
So for people that are out there listening, they might be going, but how does this relate to my business at all? So let's talk a little bit about that.
Yes, that's the yumminess. So, when you're creating a business or an entrepreneur, you're basically creating something that means something to you. It's either who you are, what you represent, who you want to be of service to. It's your essence, really, So as you're creating your business and you have the human design chart, what if you're not really being authentic and you're really living in a space of conditioning of who you think you should be or who society thinks you should be? Then you won't be creating a business that is authentically you, and it'll be a business it may be successful, but there may be struggle. You may feel resistance. You may not feel aligned with it. Whereas if you tune back into your chart, reconnect with your energies, that's consistent, reconnect with where you're open and taking in other people's energies, connect with your life purpose, then you can realign so that you are having a business from a place that is authentically you and living your strategy. So strategy means each of the 5 charts has a different strategy in the way that we make decisions, the way that we put ourselves out there into the world. And once you align with your strategy, things start to happen a lot easier. So by adding this into your business, it creates more ease within your business and building your business, but you do have to trust the strategy, which is hard sometimes. The 5 types are the projector, the manifesting generator, the manifester, the generator, and the reflector. I also just want to throw out there that my teacher, Karen Curry Parker, who actually studied with Ra and who has been coaching and teaching for over 20 years, is changing the wording because the narrative is restrictive in some of the things that it states. Like some of the names of the gates are like, ooh, that's kind of negative. I don't really understand that. So she is in the works of changing the narratives and the names of the type. So I just wanted to throw that out there if I mess up and say
which goes right into what you were saying before. And I think that that's an important thing for a lot of people because I have a huge martial art background, which is very, very, very deep rooted in tradition. And one of the things I've always tried to do is sort of modernize it, still keep with some of the practices. But I think that modernization, like you said, is so important because it helps people to connect to where they are today, with that relation. So I think it's good that there's those changes being made.
Yes. Awesome. Yes. I want to put it in there in case I kind of miss up some of the words. Because like a manifesting generator is a time bender and so forth. So those are the 5 types, and each type has a different strategy. So meaning in your business, when you make a decision or you put yourself out there, you'd have a different strategy in how you do that. So as a manifesting generator, which is what I am, I have the manifesting power of initiation and also the generator type, which is the workforce. So thinking of generators, it's like the bumblebees, the worker bees, they do all the work, they have all the energy. The manifestors are the ones that have these big ideas, big inspirations, and they actually don't have the workforce energy. So at times, they actually need people to do the work for them, which are generator types. The projectors are the overseers, so the orchestrators. And the projectors have, I have found the projectors have had the hardest time with struggle. And that is because as a projector, really what needs to be done is have really good self-care. Like they have to have a regimen where they sleep. They have to have a regimen where they are not out there forcing and initiating, because what happens is they get exhausted, and then the universe will not give them the invitation that they need to be able to take that next step. So a projector, to have their energy put out into the world, they have to be invited and recognized. So that means if they have an inspiration and they want to jump on it and bring it out there and do all the work, most likely what's going to happen is they're going to project that energy out. And what happens when you project? You push people away. So that knowing that energy type of, okay, I have this inspiration. Is this for me? What does it look like? Sitting with it and letting people, you can inform people and talk about it, ask people about their input, but then waiting for the invitation or the recognition for someone to say, that's an amazing idea. I would love to talk with you more. There's the invitation. So then the energy is not projecting onto them. Does that make sense?
I think it does. And I think that that might relate to a lot of people, because I think a lot of people, especially in this day and age, they'll say, I've heard stuff like, people say, I don't understand. Like, I'm putting this stuff out there and I'm doing these classes and I'm putting all of this stuff on social media and I'm like doing all of these things and nobody is coming. Like, what is happening?
Yeah.
So I think that this could be something that goes, well, this is why.
Yeah. So, and that is why if you're a projector and if you're a manifesting generator, what the strategy is waiting to respond. So what that means is you'd have an inspiration. Then you'd ask, my teacher only says everything above the neck is asking questions only. So that means no figuring out in the mind, no manipulating things and figuring stuff out to get things out there, but waiting and trusting for signs that it's for you to do it and in right timing. So manifesting generator, have an inspiration, sit back, envision. Manifesting generators get to envision. Envision. Wait for an external sign, whether it be someone reaching out to you. It can be a gut feeling if you're very intuitive. We look into your spleen to see what intuition you have there, an instinct. It could be noticing a sign and having the word pop out at you, but waiting for something to respond to you from the external world for you to make that move. And then we have to inform and then move forward. So there's a process for manifesting generators. Generators are waiting to respond only. So they get the inspiration, they get the idea, they maybe talk about it, they wait for things in the external world to respond to know it's for them to move forward. Reflectors are the rarest. They're 1% of population, and they actually work best if they wait 28 days. So waiting a whole moon cycle to be able to make that decision. And the reason that is because a reflector has all open centers. So they really have to connect with the phases of the moon in the gates that are activated in the moon for them to know how it feels to say yes or no to something, as far as a decision like work, love, or moving. And then the manifestor is informing. And the reason that is not informing for permission, it's informing of their great inspiration, because what happens is they're so powerful in the energy that if they just do something, people are like, what the heck are you even doing? I have no idea what you're doing right now. So they have to inform to be able to have people understand what's going on and then have them move forward with it.
So with all of these people are like, okay, how do I even know? Like, I might know which one I am, but then how do I take that information and go forward? And that's where somebody like you comes in. So let's describe a little bit about how I know that you give this information to people, but then what do they do with it? Like, they're like, well, that's good to know. Thank you. And instead of just sitting it on the shelf.
Yes. And that's the peeling off the layers part. Yeah. So the first thing is definitely get your chart, which I do offer a free chart, so that you can see where you have colored in, defined consistency, where you have openness, where you have variability. That's the first step. Then the second step is noticing in the variability places where there's conditioning. So I would do coaching, or I have a program that we would go deeper into like some of the beliefs and conditioning that you may have learned while you were growing up from your parents or from society, so that you can release that, so that you can step into your authentic self. Then from there, after we do the conditioning work and going into your self, I like to call it the self-study work, then you can go into, okay, what am I here to do as far as my life purpose, and how can I bring my services into my life purpose in a way that is consistent with my strategy. So then we work on strategies, we work on the different planets, because each planet, I'm starting to go deep, but I don't want to do that. Each planet has a different meaning. So the sun is what you're here to put out into the world. The earth is what grounds you. The moon is why you're here. So then we start looking at what gates are in those planets. And then we start to make your action plan or make your business plan in a way that is aligned with your energy and aligned with your authenticity.
Because I think that's somewhere that a lot of business people struggle, right? Because will start a business because, it's something that they like to do, something that they're passionate about. But then you get into the nitty gritty of it, or the day-to-day tasks, and then you kind of get stuck. So is this something that when someone is like, okay, well, I've started on this path and I'm, whatever, hopefully not too far along in my life, is it, they might be feeling, is this too late? I'm in my late 40s.
Yeah. And that's a great question. And it goes back to the types too. So as a manifesting generator, for instance, manifesting generators are supposed to be doing numerous things at numerous times, because they have the energy to do so. And if they don't, then they can burn themselves out because they're not doing enough. Now, just because you're doing 5 things doesn't mean that they're all work. So letting that be okay. Letting it be okay that these 2 things that you had loved so much and put so much effort into are now not aligning with where you want to go. So being able to release that and know that was part of your journey to be able to get to where you are now.
Because I think that's a hard thing. That release can be very difficult for people, especially entrepreneurs, because you put all that time into it, right? You put that investment, you feel like like you had said before, when you start a business, it's almost like you're starting with your essence. So letting that go sometimes feels really difficult.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And also you could think of it as a step in growth, because we are always evolving and growing. So if you think of your business as where you started and you have this vision of what you want it to be like when you first started, and you stay there, you're going to stay stuck. You're not opening up to that bigger perspective. You're not letting yourself receive new ideas, new inspirations, and new collaborations. Whereas if you learn to, okay, this gave me what I needed to in that moment. I'm very thankful that, like yoga, I'm very thankful that my yoga practice gave me what I needed to be where I am. Now I know that I am moving here, and I can still come to there, and I can still appreciate the fact that that was a gift to me. It doesn't mean you're letting go of something. It's me that you're progressing and stepping into a higher potential of your growth.
Yeah, I love that. I think that's a fantastic way to think about it.
Thank you.
So if someone is sitting there and they're, and I know you've said that there's so much and you can dive into so many different rabbit holes. So where is the best place for someone to start if they're listening to this and they're like, okay, I'm intrigued, I kind of want to know a little bit more about this. Where should they start?
Yeah, if you go on my site, Miranda-Mitchell.com, there's a button there that you can click on, and it'll ask you for your information. So your birth date, place, and time. Time is really important. So if you don't happen to have the time and you know someone that may have it, it'd be nice to get as close as possible, because It does shift the chart some. So that would be the first step. And then from there, I end up running the chart so that it's accurate, because sometimes things get put in kind of funky. So that way it's accurate. And then I'll send you the chart with a little mini couple things that came up. And then from there, if you want to go deeper, you can schedule a foundational call, which it will go dive deep into what it means for you. And then from there, see what process comes up for you. Because I have learned something through this as an entrepreneur. Is a huge learning point for me, because, you know, we're all taught as entrepreneurs to be out there, to get an answer right away, you know, to don't let them think and all of that before if they feel like they want to in the moment, to say yes and have them sign up. So I've learned through this process that through the chart, there are a lot of people that have emotional authorities, which means they are not here designed to say yes in the moment. And if they do, they may regret it.
Right.
To let them have that space, to let them wait those 3 days to think about it, to ask themselves. So I like to go, I always use journey, and I know it's cliche, but I really believe everyone is at their own place in their own space. And whatever is right for you is right for you in that moment. So first it's the chart, then the foundational reading. Then if you want to jump right into self-alignment and purposeful entrepreneur, go right ahead. Or you may want to integrate and then do another reading. So it's up to whatever you're looking for in your journey at that point.
I love that. And I think that's a great place for people to kind of even learn. You have so much information, and we'll make sure that we link to your website and also all of your social media. Because even when I was looking before this interview, there was so much information on. So I totally get what you say about the rabbit hole, because I was like, I need to stop, because I think I'm falling a little bit far into this hole, because there's so much information. You know, I think that, that it can seem intimidating when you first look at it, especially if that's not something that you're used to. You know, if you're kind of like, well, this kind of seems a little woohooey, which I'm sure you get a lot.
Yes. Yeah. And it's okay if you need to sit back a little bit. I'll be honest with you. When I first did my level 1 training, it was so much for me. I had to take 2 weeks off. Like, I had to just sit and integrate and like look and ask questions, and because it really was a lot for me. And then at that point, after I felt like I had digested all the information, then I took that next step. So some people can do that. And then some people want to dive right in. But I will say, I've had to slow people down quite a bit because they want to know like what that gate means and what does self-love mean and how does that mean in the unconscious. And I'm just like, okay, dial it back. We'll get there. We'll get there. We'll get there.
All in due time sometimes.
Yes. You know, because I mean, we're based on information. We want more info, but what are we going to do with that info? Are we just going to know it, or are we going to practice it and integrate it?
So going forward, now that you're at such a different place than sort of where you started from, what do you see going forward in the future? Like where are you sort of targeted at for your?
Ooh, I ask those questions all the time. I do have a vision. However, I'm very good at letting go and trusting. So if it doesn't work out the way that I thought, it's a bigger potential for me, you know, but eventually I feel a strong urge with community. I love connection with people. I love practice with people, consistency. So what I see is being able to help people align energetically with who they are. And then through community and practice together and consistency, then I can not only create a safe space for everyone to grow and flourish, but then they can do that for their own businesses as well.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. So if you had one tip for people going forward today, we're in such a different time. And I know there's, where I'm hearing so much, even from our listeners, that they're feeling the stress of just everything that's going on. What's one tip that you could bestow upon them?
Yeah, well, the pandemic has really given us the opportunity to get comfortable with learning to love ourselves, which I feel is a huge gift, because before we were constantly going. So really tuning into who you are, your energies, and then finding if you're comfortable with being with yourself, or if you're uncomfortable, and what that means. I love to journal, ask questions. Breath practices are great for awareness. Anything that grounds you into a space that you feel peaceful will help you get those inspiration and ideas. So finding your place of peace, whether it be outside or, we all have our space, and then asking those questions. What is for me? What is this for me? Or why am I uncomfortable in this space? It all starts with self-awareness and learning about who you are. So I always like to start with the self rather than external.
That's wonderful. I think those are great questions, even for people to add into their, journal exercises for whenever they do that, just to even start that thought process continuing to go.
Mm-hmm. It's very powerful.
Well, it's been an absolute pleasure. And I think there's so much more. I feel like we could dive so much deeper into stuff, but we'll let people jump down the small rabbit hole first. So I thank you so much for your time. And we'll make sure we link to where everybody can find you. And did you have anything else that you want to mention to people before we go?
First, just thank you. Thank you for everything. And I always like to say, we're at where we're supposed to be at in this moment. So be compassionate and loving towards yourself. With compassion and love towards yourself, you actually move forward at a faster rate than by forcing yourself through restriction and kind of negative self-talk. So always love yourself.
You can't end more perfect than that. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
To find all of the ways that you can connect with Miranda, as well as get your free reading of your human design chart, visit us on our website at foxtalksbusiness.ca. Click on blogs on the left-hand side of the page. You will see this episode, and if you just scroll down, all of the links will be there for a quick, easy click. If you've always wanted to put face to names, you can also visit our YouTube channel at Fox Talks Business and watch as well as listen to this episode. On next week's episode, I'm going to be answering all of the questions that you've been sending in. But don't worry, you still have time to get your burning question in. So just use the email address in the description of this episode and let me know what's on your mind. And we will do our best to get all of the questions answered for next week's episode. I'm really excited. There's some very good questions there. So no matter what you're doing today, whether you're trying to find your human design or whether you're just trying to figure out how to be human, make sure that you find time to have fun. Because if you're not having fun, why are you doing it?